Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to On the Couch with Creatives. I say good morning, but obviously good afternoon or good evening if you're anywhere else in the world. Creatives is part of the Creatives private membership group for creative professionals everywhere. We aim to help you learn, grow, and develop your creative business. I'm Melanie Perry.
And I'm Julie Hyde-Mew.
Julie, I'm very excited. We have a marvellous guest on the couch today. Can you tell us who it is, please?
A big name, Stuart EPPS. Good morning, Stuart. Nice to have you.
Yeah, good morning. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Well, Stuart is an audio engineer and record producer. And since 1967, Stuart has worked with such big names as Elton John, Led Zeppelin, Oasis, Twisted Sister, Nine Lives, Bill Wyman, Kiki Dee, George Harrison, Robbie Williams, Mark Owen, Paul Weller, Cliff Richard, Bad Company, Barry White, and Chris Rea. Well, that's an impressive lineup, Stuart. How on earth did you get into this industry in the first place?
Well, after reading out that list, we probably haven't got time for the interview, have we? Looks like you might have missed a couple out. Anyway,
sure, you've worked with other big names. I mean, that was just a very short list, I'm sure.
I'm joking, that'll do. Okay, so the story is, it's a long one, and every year I get older, the story becomes a bit longer, actually, which is not surprising. But yes, you know, I joined a music publisher called Dick James in 1967, and this was an exciting time. I wasn't really getting on very well at school. I was 15. Anyway, my friend Clive Franks was already working there. He used to come back with all these amazing stories about the Beatles, because Dick James was the Beatles music publisher. So I joined there in 67 as an office boy, and there was a sort of a hierarchy you went through there to work your way up, as it were. And I went from office boy to disc cutter to studio assistant engineer to engineer. And along the way, I met a rather flamboyant, charismatic chap. There were lots of them around, but there was one in particular called Reginald Kenneth Dwight. And anyone who's a fan will know that name. He changed it to Elton John. And we became good friends. He used to play me songs on the piano. And I just thought he was a bit amazing. I always wanted to be a singer-songwriter, be in a band. But after hearing his songs, I just thought, wow, this guy is something else. I want to be involved with his career if possible. So I went into A&R, and then I went to work for a chap called Steve Brown, who was Elton John's coordinator, manager really at the time. We formed DJM Records, and really for several years after that, I just worked we worked on Elton John's career on a daily basis, really trying to get him known, trying to get him somewhere or other. You know, we used to dream of what could be. I toured with him when I was 18. I hadn't been to America before. Turned up at the airport with Elton John and the band to do a 3-month tour of America. We played at Carnegie Hall. They were incredible times, really. Although we just took it in our stride, Elton included. You know, we didn't know any better, so this just seemed to be what you do. So we did that, and obviously he started to get well known, started to get very well known, to the point that he started Rocket Records, his own record company. Dick James wasn't very happy about that, but we went to form our own record company where we signed Kiki Dee. I was now assistant to the head of the record company there. This is a very long story. I'm trying to get there as quick as possible. But I mean, along the way, you know, there were some amazing things. In 1974, Elton John asked Kiki Dee to go on tour with him. And I was actually looking after Kiki at the time. So we did this incredible 3-month tour. We had our own aeroplane called the Starship. We had limousines, because now Elton was pretty famous. So, you know, we did these incredible things, not least of which was John Lennon came to join us on that tour. He came to sing with Elton actually on stage at Madison Square Gardens. I was with John in the it's a bit of a story, but we won't go into that, maybe another time, when Yoko Ono knocked on the door of the dressing room and John was in there with another woman. That was a bit weird. It turns out they knew each other. Anyway, there's all sorts of stories that go on. But after Rocket Records, Elton John's producer decided to build a studio, and he wanted to build it in Cookham, which is where I'm talking from now. Cookham was a village I knew very well. So I was happy to do that. In fact, I was going to retire prior to this because I was now getting on a bit. I was 23 and I'd done everything, been everywhere. I've been to Hawaii actually and met a lady that lived in an ice cream van, and I was going to go and join her. But Gus said this would be a better idea. You can always get ice cream, you know. So it wasn't all I was getting. But anyway, so he built this incredible studio. It cost £1 million in 1974, called The Mill, in Mill Lane in Cookham. And it took 2 years to build. It was an incredible place. And we started doing Elton John sessions there. And I started getting back into actually working in the studio because I had been producing when I was 18, but I'd sort of gone into management now and coordination and this sort of thing. But the studio was magnificent. We worked with a young guy there. He came down from Middlesbrough, which maybe people in the UK have heard of, called Chris Rea. We worked with a band called Voyager. We had a big hit with Halfway Hotel. And the Mill time was an incredible time. I worked for Gus there for 5 years. He had to sell the studio, unfortunately, but he sold it to another fairly charismatic gentleman who was in a band called Led Zeppelin. And his name was Jimmy Page. And I went to work with Jimmy for 5 years. A bit of a terrible thing happened. He hadn't bought the studio very long, whereas a drummer was found dead in his house. So Zeppelin, unfortunately, didn't materialize because they didn't want to get carry on with that. But he would then tell his friends, Jimmy's friends, about the Mill, and his friends included George Harrison, Mick Fleetwood, and all these incredible people were now using the studio, trying to get there. Because actually yesterday I was with an interesting chap. He was the guitarist in a band called Twisted Sister. You mentioned him, you see. Now, I was with him just yesterday, so he's in my head, and he informs me that it was 40 years ago when we made his record at the Mill, and I just thought, that's awful, that's terrible, that's not even funny. But anyway,
crazy. How the time flies.
Yeah, slightly, and you hear people say that, but you don't realize it until it happens to you. So he's now 70. To be honest, when I worked with Twisted Sister, they were a mad bunch. And he was wearing a ridiculous long wig at the time. So I thought he was a kid. And it turns out he was the same age as me. So I only just found that out. But anyway, we did this with Jimmy Page. Some great sessions we did there. We did the last Zeppelin album. And we mixed the last Zeppelin album. Anyway, after that, I decided to go freelance as a record producer engineer. So that took me away from the Mill, although I've always stayed in Cookham. And because I love the village, and I probably know everyone here now. They were going to make me mayor of Cookham, actually. So that's a joke.
You know Melanie. Melanie lives in Cookham.
Who does?
I'd vote for you for being mayor of Cookham.
There you go.
Melanie lives in Cookham.
Ah, well, we could have popped round. We'll have to pop round. Anyway, so now I've got a small studio where I'm speaking from now, but to be honest, it's the best studio I've ever worked in, I've ever had. With the invention of the internet, I can now work with artists from all over the world in this room. Sometimes I don't see them, sometimes I don't even speak to them, because music actually is something that you can now work with without having people physically with you. And making music is, for me, a magic experience, always has been, whether the band's in front of me, whether it's Elton John or whether it's a new artist like the one I'm managing, Liam Price. It can be a magic experience, and one that I've been doing all this time. So that's what I do on a daily basis, is working on some people's home recordings. And then if I need to go into a big studio, you know, I've worked at Abbey Road and all sorts of studios. So everything's possible now. Especially with the internet and the technology, which I've seen develop over the last 55 years in sound recording. So I'm not just a pretty face. No, I wasn't going to say that. I'm not just a record producer, but I'm also almost a historian on recording through the ages.
Well, yeah, I mean, you must have seen a huge amount of change, as you've said, and now technology's on the scene, and it is changing at such a rapid pace, isn't it? I mean, goodness knows what will be in the next 10 years.
The technology for recording doesn't particularly change at a rapid pace, because to be honest, one way or another, you're still dealing with music that hasn't actually changed over the years that much. Yes, of course, the way we record it has changed, but it doesn't, you don't, it's not something I have to keep up with particularly, because one way or another, I'm still working with rock bands, with pop bands, and the music's not that different. And actually people, which is almost sad in a way, but people reflect on the sound of the 70s as a great time, as great sounding, and they still love it. So I'm still sought after for getting those sort of sounds, of course the sound quality is different, but I mean, one way or another, a song is a song, and it's the atmosphere it gives off and what you can capture from the artist if they're in the room singing, So some of these very basic qualities haven't really changed, although the technology, as we say, has changed.
Well, definitely the technology has made things easier. We wouldn't be talking to you if it weren't for the internet.
Of course. Well, you'd have to pop round, that's all.
You'll have to have a cup of tea, cake next
Have
time.
a cup of tea, exactly.
Yeah. Now, I'd like to talk to you. You mentioned Liam Price. I'd like to talk to you about Liam. He's a remarkable young man who appeared on The Voice Kids, didn't he? And we're just going to play a little clip of that now, because it was he's such a tremendous voice. And the moment when everybody turned around, it actually gives you shivers. So let's just take a look.
Sometimes in our lives we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. You just call on the brother when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. Hold me, hold me.
So that was the fabulous Liam Price. So Stuart, how did you get to represent Liam, and tell us what's going on now?
Yeah, well, it was fairly straightforward. People send me recordings all the time, and I encourage people after they've seen this or while they're seeing this to do the same. And it was his mother, actually, Donna, who sent me a track, and I play it like I play everything, try and play it with an open mind. But the fact is, when I played this particular track, this voice came through that I loved straight away. I just thought, wow, that's a great voice. So reminded me a bit of a young Stevie Wonder or Michael Jackson or maybe an Elton. And then I found out that he'd also written the song that he was singing. So that was something amazing. But then I found out he was only 15. So that really was amazing, because as we know, well, I'm not a youngster anymore, but 15 these days, when I was growing up, is probably about 5, now. So this is like a 5-year-old singing and playing. So 15, incredibly young. So I thought, well, I don't want to just work with this guy, maybe I can help him in his career, which I've been doing for the last 1.5 to 2 years. And we released singles. He's been in the studio in Cookham. He's actually from Birmingham, so it's a little bit of a trek. But we've recorded here. He's very, very, very talented chap.
He is.
So if you're actively seeking new talent at the moment, Stuart, how do people actually get hold of you?
Well, through my website, stuartepps.co.uk, you just contact me, and then we're in contact, and one way or another we can, I have to hear obviously what the artist is looking for, and that's how it's very simple, that way that that's the way that I get in touch with new artists, new bands, whatever it is. I tend to think I'm a bit overqualified these days, but we won't tell anyone that. But I like to listen to new music. Obviously, some of it's better than others, but it's always exciting one way or another to find new talent to work with.
Yeah, I can imagine, because you just it must give you the real chills when you just hear that one thing come through that really stands head and shoulders above anything else.
Hasn't been many chills this summer, has there? It's been scorching up here, and now I've just had first time I've had to put in air conditioning, actually, because it was very hot.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, it doesn't happen very often. I get tingles, if I hear something exceptional, and I've got to say, unfortunately, it doesn't happen very much these days. There's a lot of people that want to make music, but it's still probably just as difficult as it's ever been to be able to make great music, to be a great musician, to be a great anything. Is still a bit of a find. So in a way, that's that's still good, so that the quality of music is still up there. So
yeah, absolutely. And Liam's got great stage presence as well, hasn't he? I mean, when he appeared on Kids that Voice Kids, I mean, oh my goodness, I mean, he was just a personality, not just a voice.
Well, he is, that's true. He's a great lad, but that was when he was a little kid. I mean, he's grown up quite a bit. He's 8 foot tall now. That was when he was 13. So we did a concert only a couple of weeks ago at the great Cliveden House, which is only up on the hill from here. And Liam played in front of 150 club members around their swimming pool, actually, this famous swimming pool, which I organised at Cliveden. And he went down an absolute storm. He holds, he's got great charisma, as you say, and he's a great lad who can only do better, really, in the future.
And if you were at Cliveden, did you follow tradition and throw off all your clothes and jump in the pool?
No.
People are much more well-behaved these days. You find that, Stuart, with your musician friends, that they much more well-behaved these days than in the days of rock and roll?
Of course, and actually, I've still got in my mind his name is JJ French, who was the guitarist in this ludicrously outrageous band called Twisted Sister. And I knew this at the time when I met them, but I always say, and I was telling JJ this, that I often find that the artists and the bands with the most outrageous publicity or vision, how they look are very often the opposite of that. Jimmy Page is supposed to be this rock god, this amazing rock god of the guitar, who's quite a quiet guy, quite a shy guy. In fact, Elton was very shy when I first met him as well, I mean, that's why it's very weird if anyone gets into this business, because, to be an artist, to be a songwriter, you have to be of that, temperament, artistic temperament, which often means that you're quite quiet and shy and that you're thinking about things all the time. But then also you're supposed to be this this sort of person who goes in front of hundreds of thousands of people at a gig wearing outrageous clothes, possibly to get noticed. So it's a very strange personality that it takes to be that person, which is another reason why not everyone can do it. They fall at the first hurdle. I can't perform, I can't do that, I just write songs, I just want to write songs. Well, that's not going to happen if you want to be a big star. Yeah. And in the case of Twisted Sister, they were outrageous looking. They wore all this makeup, and actually their language was a bit out there when they were gigging and stuff. But they were all, when they stayed at the studio in Cookham, they all had pictures of their wives next to the bed. Dee Snider, which, he's had his teeth shaved into a point, so he's got fangs. I mean, and he's got hair down to the floor where he used to have. He probably hasn't anymore. But he didn't even drink alcohol. He's never drunk alcohol in his life. He certainly didn't do drugs. So it's quite funny when you get to know some of these people. I don't know whether that's the case with today's artists, but actually today's artists aren't that, they don't go for such an outrageous persona as they used to in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
You miss it?
So, say again?
Do you miss that outrageous persona or personas?
Well, not really. Not really. I mean, I must admit, when you look back at it, it just looks a bit ridiculous, really. So, I mean, it was always the music that was important, but it's more for the audience, you see. When you're putting on a show, I mean, Elton John was doing concerts for quite a few years, and no one was taking a blind bit of notice. And we used to try and get them to shut up in the audience and listen to this guy who's actually singing great songs. You know, this is called Your Song, and you should listen to it. And they were just taking no notice. So he got fed up with that as well. And when he first went to America in the mid 60s, he just decided, I'm not going to be ignored anymore. He actually wasn't dressed that outrageously, but he started doing rock and roll songs, standing on the piano, getting people to clap along. I found it a bit embarrassing to start with, but the audience seemed to like it. He knew they liked it. So then he started dressing up, you know, as Mickey Mouse or whatever it was, because he likes having fun with it as well.
Yeah.
And one way or another, the audience are there to have a good time and to enjoy a show. So, you know, you do need to do that as an artist. If you're going to get on stage, that's what I say, you know, don't go on with the clothes that you just came to this, you know, the gig in. Obviously dress up a bit and put on a show. And charisma is extremely important. You know, that being able to stand there and to have audiences relate to you and to like you or to even love you is very, very important. So, you know, that is a quality that's required. I know you're going to ask me about it, but that's a quality that I look for in any artist that I might be producing or working with over and above just a session. Do they have this star quality, you can call it, X factor, these various terms, but it's absolutely true. They need to be there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's why people, as you say, they fall down and they fail because they don't realise how many different elements there are to be that star quality. It's not just a case of having a flamboyant personality. You have to be talented at the music and you have to care and you have to have a passion. It has to be the whole package, doesn't it, Stuart, really?
Exactly. It's absolutely right, yeah.
And not everybody can be a Freddie Mercury. Surely there is a place on the stage for the quieter types.
Well, being quiet is one thing. I mean, Joni Mitchell, who I grew up with, who I love to bits, I still do. You know, she was the first artist that I could listen to, which wasn't like a band with all sorts of guitars and everything else. You know, simple acoustic and voice. It was folk music. So I loved the music and I loved her voice. But when I went to see her, she was on the stage on her own. And actually, when she came out, you know, to perform, I was a bit disappointed because I'd fallen in love with her, really. And I expected Marilyn Monroe or I knew she didn't look like Marilyn Monroe, but I still expected some glamorous woman that I was going to, you know, fall in love with even more. And when she came out, she was very downplayed and she looked lovely. But to be honest, when she did leave the stage, finally after the gig, I had fallen more in love with her because of her charisma, because of the warmth that she exuded off stage when she was playing these songs. The passion, actually, that's the word for it. It's a very important word in music for me. And it's the passion that these artists feel for the songs they write, for the performances they do, which actually, when you go and see them, I know you've probably been to concerts and you'll say, wow, that was, you know, you could see the passion coming from the artist. And Elton, if we take that, you know, Elton would not leave the stage until everyone in that auditorium or even in a club was on their feet loving him and going berserk, you know, because, you know, you just want everyone to get involved in a show, if it's a show, you know.
Yeah.
And walk out on a high.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, if an artist comes on very apologetically and, you know, you can tell they don't really want to be there, they'd rather be at home, and that's not going to be Ed Sheeran, or it's not going to be any of the latest or youngest artists, really. That's, I mean, I miss bands, for one thing. I do miss rock bands, and I miss, you know, I think that's a bit of a shame that so many artists, it's all solo artists now. They can't seem to work together anymore. You know, a couple of arguments and they probably say, I'm not doing that again. Whereas bands is like a family, and it's a unique coming together of musicians and artists And
Well,
it just doesn't seem to be.
with all the boy bands, didn't it? They were bringing in total strangers to each other and expecting them to make music together.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I worked with two guys from a fairly well-known boy band called Take That. And I worked with them individually not together, but I worked with Mark Owen on his album. I sang with Mark. He came to my studio. He's taken down the pub. So I got quite friendly with Mark. And then I worked with Robbie Williams, same thing. We got quite friendly. And their story is pretty amazing, because, as you say, they weren't even singers. They used to go to some sort of dance club, and someone came around and said, we're forming a band. Does anyone want to join? And Mark said, oh, yeah, I'm into that. And they said, can you sing? He said, well, not really. Can you dance? Yes, good, right, you're in. And but the thing is that having worked with Mark and Robbie, the two of them, I mean, you can learn how to be a pop star. You can pick it up. And then if it works, which is obviously in the case of Robbie and Mark, you're away, really. But obviously there was a talent there as well. Robbie's got a great voice. Well, actually, he's got a good voice, but his talent is writing words. He's a great wordsmith, and also, most importantly, his passion and his desperation to be a pop star. That's what he wants to be. That's all he cared about. I'll do whatever it takes. Tell me what to do. Good at taking advice, good at taking orders, if you like. And, well, he did quite well, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's quite an important point as well with some of the youth today, is they don't seem to be, maybe I've just been a grumpy old woman, I don't know, but some of them don't seem to be that good at taking advice or taking direction. And they think they know it all. And it's like, actually, you need to listen to somebody who's seasoned in the industry and been doing it for years and years and years, because if you don't, you're daft.
Yes, that's one of the things. I'm probably answering the questions you're going to ask me at the end. But, if someone says, what does it take to be a successful artist? It is taking advice. But it's also, one thing that's a bit of a shame that young people seem to want is to be able to do everything. And I hate to level that to the female bunch, but they seem to be the worst at that, is that I want to be the producer, I want to be the engineer, I want to be the lyricist, I want to be the vocalist, I want to be this, I want to be that. And so they say, and I can do it, I can do this, I can do everything. I don't need anyone, I'll just do it. And they buy the equipment at home, and now they're the engineer and the thing. And, what I try and say is that in history, or my musical history, there's been like a couple of handfuls of artists that have been able to do that have been able to be the singer, the songwriter, the lyricist, the producer, or whatever. It's very, very Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, even Elton John. I'll keep going back to him because he's a good example. He's Sir Elton John, after all, sold, 1 billion records or whatever it is. And even Elton decided that it was also told to him that his lyrics aren't very good. It's a funny thing that I'm only finding out now that a lot of people seem to not know that, and they assume that he wrote his own words. And I find that quite amazing, really. But obviously that's very good from his point of view. They must think he's highly intelligent in just about every possible way. And his lyrics were not that intelligent, to be honest. Witch with Half Strength. No, that wasn't one of his. Tide Will Turn for Rebecca. I don't know. There was some strange things that he wrote about. But anyway, it was told to him his words aren't very good. So instead of going, well, I don't care, they're going to be my words, I don't care, I'm a great this, I'm a great that, he got a lyricist called Bernie Taupin. And that changed his whole writing style, from great songs to amazing songs, from average songs to just above average, because of a lot to do with the words, because Bernie's been writing his words for over 50 years. Mm. So, in those days, it was, if I can't do it, I'll get someone to do what I can't do. Mm. And so records in those days used to be made by teams of people. One of the best teams of all time is obviously the Beatles. We call them a band, we call them a group, but they were actually a team. and a team of amazing musicians and great guys getting together to make great music, you know. And I try and get youngsters to, you know, if you can't do it, if you can't play the piano, don't, you know, by the time you've learned how to play the piano, there's been 20 artists that have gone in front of you. So work with someone who can, you know.
Absolutely. And there's no shame. There's no shame in getting somebody to do something that you can't do or that you're slightly weaker at. I mean, look at Branson. You know, Branson is so successful because he knows what he can't do and he employs people to do it better than he can. And he's quite candid about that.
Branson, Richard, you're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, I see, yes.
You know, in business, the same rules apply, you know?
Yeah, I think that people seem to accept it more in business than they do in the arts, you know, in music. And but I always say that to actually, all right, making music, if you want to just do it for yourself is one thing, but if you want to sell music and if you want to make a career out of making music, then it's just like any other business. And then you have to turn to business things to get that to happen. Like one of them, obviously, if I can't do that, get someone to do it because, you know, I want to be successful and whatever it takes, let's get there.
Yeah. And you need to focus on what you're good at. If you're saying that you can do everything, which you can't because nobody can do everything, and you spread yourself too thin and you're trying to be, I mean, sound engineering, when I made a film, as you know, Stuart, when we did the little, my interview on the Media Hub, but I did all the sound for my film myself and I'd never done that before. And I learned a hell of a lot, but it's not as good as if I could have afforded to have someone do it properly. Sound engineering is a real skill. And if you're a vocalist, get on with the singing, is what I say. Let you know, you want a good technical engineer mixing your stuff because that is going to really help you.
Yes, well, good. Well, you have to say that much louder and to everyone that you know so that my job can continue.
Oh, I will, believe me.
Well, that's obviously a top tip for singers or wannabe stars. What about tips for music producers? What are your top 3 tips for people who want to break into the music industry and produce music like you do?
Right. Well, I suppose the very top tip, depending on your age, is to find out what you think you're best at. So it's not easy as a youngster because, you know, obviously that sometimes develops over time. But one way or another, if you've got a talent that you were born with actually singing is one of those. It's not something really that you've either got it or you haven't. So if you think, well, I'm pretty sure I'm a great singer, then, you know, take that forward really. You know, join a band or find musicians if you're not a great musician, or if you can't play an instrument, find people that can play an instrument. That's what we used to do. It's only repeating what was done in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. Really, that's what people did. So find out what you might be good at. If you're really not interested in being a singer or even a songwriter, but you like the technical aspect, you know, the technical aspect really, that's, wow, I'm good at that, you know, and I like messing with computers and plugs and wires, then obviously get into the tech side and focus on that. The thing is, if it was to be 3 things, it would be the passion, you know, being passionate about it, being focused and being almost single-minded as much as possible. And I suppose the third one could be luck, to be honest, because luck plays a very big part in anyone's career. But when you get that luck, it's doing the best for that piece of luck. And it's taking that and running with it, if you like, and making it into something. That good fortune, that piece of luck that's come along. Maybe you met Richard Branson, you just mentioned, or, you know, you met this one or that one, or it's just going to the right college, you know, to meet people of like-minded, just meeting like-minded people who are doing the same thing. So going to the right school, going to the right college, you know, listening to the right people. Listening is extremely important. Absorbing is extremely important. You know, listening to what's going on, listening to people that have done it all before. I mean, I'm actually just recounting the way I started out in the music business. I mean, I used to sit in the studio with Elton John's producer as his assistant, and I would not speak and I would not offer any advice or anything at all unless I was 190% sure of what I was saying that was going to help or was going to go down well. But basically, I would just shut up and absorb everything that was going on like a sponge. And if you're into music and if you're a fan of music, that's important. I don't know anyone that I've worked with that's not a big fan of music and big fan of the industry that they want to join. I mean, certainly if you're thinking of joining it to make money, then I should say forget it and become a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, a banker or something or other. But lawyer, doctor, banker, that's not a bad line. I think that's off of an Elton song. But yeah, so those are I can't remember whether I pinpointed 3 tips, but passion, dedication, focus, luck, there's 4.
Absolutely. And I'm going to throw one in there as well, because I had a friend who was always going on about being a musician, but she was a bit of a dreamer, I have to be honest. But the one thing that I did when I really was trying to progress my media career, I got involved in community radio. And I said to her at the time, if you're serious about meeting artists and getting in, as you said quite rightly, being in the right place at the right time, mixing with the right people, you know, and you think, oh, I really don't know, how do I even start that if you don't have enough money to go to music college or anything like that? But have a look around you. Can you get in as a volunteer on one of your local community radio programs that has a music show where you're going to meet artists or be asked to interview artists or something like that? Because you never know where things like that can lead on to if you are willing to put the work in and give it your passion.
Yes, well, absolutely. There's you know, when I started off, where's my violin? There wasn't music schools, but it was easier to join a studio or join a record company as an office boy or girl and learn that way. But now there are hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of music schools. And I suppose, you know, for someone who doesn't want to leave, or their parents don't want them to actually leave school, they're a bit worried about, they don't know where to go, they don't know where to start to go to work even. So it's an easy option, if you like. I mean, it is expensive, but to a certain extent, you know, which actually might not be a good thing. Because to be honest, I shouldn't really say this, but I can't help it. A lot of the artists that I've worked with or would-be artists that have been to music school, unfortunately have sort of got a bit of a set thing in their head of the way that they were taught to follow. And to a certain extent, especially if you're a songwriter, and actually you said, I know you didn't say it in a nasty way, you said she's a bit of a dreamer, but absolutely being a dreamer is what also makes for an artist. You know, Chris Rea, who I work with, he was telling me that he was always getting told off in class because he'd be staring out of the window. Rea, what are you doing? You know, concentrate. Can't you concentrate on your work? You know, and he was concentrating on God knows what. The same with Bernie Taupin, actually, Elton's lyricist, because to be a poet and to be a lyricist it's definitely a dreamer's.
Oh, it is, and she's the most lovely girl, Stuart. She really is. Yeah. I keep trying to say to her, you know, being a dreamer is fantastic, but as you said, that's not enough. You need somebody to help channel that into where it's going to get seen. She writes songs and stuff. I said, but what songs if no one's going to hear them? Okay,
I've got another answer to all of this, which I've just thought of, is that when I was starting off and get the violins out, the music business was not even a business. It was this strange area of life where peculiar people, odd people, who thought they could sing or knew they could sing and wanted to sing or wanted to play an instrument and then got really good at it, would try and make something of it, you see. And they were so few and far between that actually, in a way, obviously, it might have been easier because there were less people doing it. And the people that were doing it were the passionate ones, I mean, to be honest, you've got to be a bit odd as well to get into this line. As we were saying, got to be a bit strange, you know. To be honest, these things that they tell kids they've got Asperger's or they've got this, they're polar this and polar that. All the artists I've worked with, if they didn't have bags full of those, there was something wrong. They all had these things, which has made them strange, made them different. It also made them individualistic, and if they're making music, that's the best music we've ever heard. So, and also it made them unbelievably focused, you know. So I know it's a bit strange to say, but the things that they're diagnosing kids for that they think is the worst thing in the world, if you're going to be a guitarist, or Jimi Hendrix, I mean, he used to walk around with a guitar around his neck. I mean, you know, in those days, it was pretty strange stuff. Now, maybe it would be all right, but that's all he cared about, was playing guitar. Paul Rodgers, probably the best singer I've ever worked with. All he wanted to do is sing. He didn't care about writing songs, and he wrote, "Oh, All Right Now," and this sort of stuff. But anyway, I've gone off the point now. Now, what was I talking about? Sorry, you're very good at letting me spout on.
No, we just love all the ramblings. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
It's all part of the history of music. Well,
yes.
Music.
Wonderful.
Anyway, I carry on.
Well, can you tell us some anecdotes? What's over the decades of your career, what stands out as the most, I don't know, gobsmacking thing that happened to you, something that you'll never forget?
Well, there isn't one, you know. I can't imagine that there would be one. I mean, and when I start talking about the one, then there's another one, and there's another one. There are many, you know. As I say, being in the dressing room with John Lennon at Madison Square Gardens, he hadn't been on stage before for 10 years. You know, Yoko Ono walks in the room. But not only that, I was at the bottom of the stairs with John Lennon when he went up on stage for this amazing gig with Elton, saying that he was, well, he didn't use those words, "I'm a little bit worried," but he was definitely worried. Anyway, so seeing this incredible concert was one thing. Being in the studio with Elton John and Cliff Richard singing a duet, two of my favorite singers of all time, and they're in the studio and I'm the engineer. That was a great thing. They're great atmospheres, you know. Seeing music being created and being a part of it was amazing, and they're definitely superb moments. The whole touring thing was incredible. Watching Elton's rise to fame, instead of people ignoring him, they're giving him a standing ovation. He hasn't even got on stage yet, you know. So I want to see that happen with new artists that I work with, of course, you know. So seeing it happen with Liam, you know, really sort of having those things happen to someone who's not happened before would be great. Yeah, I mean, you know, I suppose a lot of it is now in the past with some of these greats artists, but you know, there are all sorts of moments working with Robbie, working with Oasis, crazy people that you hear about, and then you actually face with them, and it all kind of goes okay. So there isn't a gobsmacking one moment, I don't think. I was still looking forward to that one, I suppose.
You never
but
know,
I don't think it's a lot of great stuff that happened, and a lot of magic that's happened along the way. And you do need to be in the right place at the right time sometimes, and who knows what that is. I suppose it's going out of your way all the time. If I'm giving advice, it's not being insular. Sometimes you've got to go looking for things. And certainly to get into the music business, it's going looking for the right situation. Like you said, if there's a local radio station, turning up for a job interview as an office boy or girl, which might think is well beneath your capabilities, you know, but just thinking, I'll do anything. I've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I know. I've just remembered now what the point I was getting to before when I fell off the end. The point I was getting to was that in the old days there were so few people doing it. Now, especially with the invention of X Factor and this, that, and the other music programs on TV, everyone wants to have a go. You see, everyone wants to have a go. Also, with the technology, everyone is capable. It's not unbelievably expensive to record at home. So there's so many people having a go at it, which obviously is good for my business. It's good for my paying the bills to get to work with some of these people. But to be honest, it's not really something that everyone can do by any means. No. Everyone can have a go at it, but you still need to be, like we were saying, a bit special to be able to. So it is very difficult for youngsters who see young girls and boys, you know, coming on the X Factor. You know, 1 minute they can just about sing, 2 days later they're the best thing on the planet. You know, everyone's so they think, well, that was easy. You know, little do they know, or maybe they do know, that it took a team of hundreds of experienced TV executives to make this happen. You know, and sometimes you never hear about these people again. I mean, I've been working with Rebecca Ferguson, who's an amazing singer, black singer, who's actually from this area, and she was runner-up. She didn't even win the X Factor, but she was runner-up in the X Factor. And it was kind of hard life for her. Well, I say hard life. She went from complete obscurity to being one of the top singers but definitely in the UK, if not in the world, just like that, due to X Factor. But the reason why that happened, yes, that was the bit of luck that she got that I was talking about. All right, her mum maybe had to get her on the program, so it was a bit of luck. But the fact is, she's got one of the best voices I've ever heard. So once she had this bit of luck, she could turn it into a career. So yeah, it's all these things that go together, I suppose.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And we're literally running out of time now. So we have got the last 5 minutes or so of our programme. We're going to play our little values jam game. So if you are ready, I'm just going to hold up my values jam card and I'm going to just run my finger along them. And then you can, if I can pick a card to say stop, and I'll pick a card.
Stop.
All right, what have we got? What have we got? What have we got? Oh, we have got a value of recognition.
Oh dear.
Is that a value, recognition? It's not a value, is it?
According to this. Now, this is interesting one, Julie. This is what the whole point of this, and why this game, my friend created this game, is that values are what's important to you. So values are not necessarily just integrity, loyalty, and all those other things that we trot out on a regular basis, but it's what's important to you. So that's why there's loads of these cards. There's all different random ones. So we're going to talk about recognition. And the first, and Julie doesn't like this first question because she says it's really bizarre and random, but we're creative. So I'm going to ask this question because it gets you thinking in a different way.
You can answer anything you want to, Stuart. You can answer
I love it. I love it. What does recognition look, feel, and sound like to you? If recognition was a sound, what would it be?
It would be a hit record.
Yeah. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. When have you personally experienced recognition?
Well, if you're kind of blessed with having great parents and, growing up in a nice environment, you learn recognition from the day you were born. You know, when my son was born, actually, my son's about to have a child himself, but I'll never forget, when he was first opened his eyes, and I would say that was recognition. He seemed to recognize me. I recognized him. It was an incredible moment. And I must admit, when you have a baby, and well, it's a long time ago now, but you see babies all over the place, and they're all putting the ice creams in their eyes and falling over, and they don't seem to be recognizing the world that quickly. I know this wasn't the answer you were expecting, but it wasn't the answer I thought I was going to give. But I always remember that, and I always think of recognition, which was for a newborn to recognize the world that they've come into. Because actually, if you believe that, then that is a belief that people have been here before. So it's all about recognizing things that you might have somewhere in the brain. So that wasn't what you were expecting. But so people have to. Sorry?
So this is why we have these questions, because it is lovely to get people's take on this and have a conversation.
Well, so that was the opposite of the answer that I was likely to give, which is probably why I gave it. My wife calls me Mr. Opposite, so that's probably why I gave it. Obviously, recognition in the music business is what it's all based on. It's all based on that. It's all based on being recognized for being a singer, being a guitarist, being a pianist, being a producer, being a this, that, and the other. And there's no point in doing it if you're doing it as a business unless it's recognized by other people. So you're constantly looking for recognition one way or another. And that's what makes it such a tough road, because you don't want to be recognized as the worst of anything. Obviously, you want to be recognized as one of the best. So it's all about, unfortunately, one way or another coming first or being recognized in the public. It's no different really to being a sportsman, sportswoman. It's all about recognition. I mean, out of all those cards, that's probably, I don't know what the others have got in them. I think I saw love there, which I'm glad I didn't get. Say about that, you either got it, fall into it or not. But yeah, recognition. You know, obviously there are people, all you want is recognition. You just want to be recognized. Oh, you're not doing it for this, or you're not doing it for that. You're doing it just to be popular or just to be famous, And it's probably right, but that's the business I'm in, one way or another. So, and when I see it happen, I've seen it happen to people that started off with no recognition whatsoever. I'm not saying that then to be recognized makes them the happiest person in the world in comparison, but one way or another, that's what they wanted. And so actually trying to achieve it is what makes it happen. It's like a goal, and it's like the carrot. It's the ultimate carrot. Yeah. Say for Elton, I'm sure it wasn't a carrot he was looking for at all, but it was to be recognized. He was I hope he's not listening, because he wasn't actually fat, to be honest. He's a lot fatter now, but he wasn't Cliff Richard. He wasn't Elvis Presley. Robbie Williams, every time he used to see himself, he says on stage, he'd see Norman Wisdom, which you might know, but a lot of people out there won't know who Norman Wisdom was, but he was a crazy comedian who always falling over and looked a bit of a twit. And Robbie Williams, that's what he says he sees when he looks at himself on stage. So he was constantly trying to get this recognition as this Tom Jones character, and in an effort to do that is trying to learn and get things better. In his efforts, or people's efforts to seek recognition, that could make them into something. I'll shut up now about that.
Well, hopefully you will recognize Melanie on the streets of Cookham when you pass her by.
I will. I definitely try to. I'm sure I should.
I'm not out and about very much, so Julie, because I'm always editing, doing stuff. I'm locked away in my little room. That's the problem.
All right. Well, we'll have to do that.
Lovely.
Well, thank you very much, Stuart. It's been wonderful talking to you, and we could listen to your anecdotes all day. We really could.
Thank you.
It really would, but we're going to play you out with a little bit of Liam Price, because he released a single, didn't he, Stuart, that is raising funds for the Ukraine.
That's right.
The Ukraine. So we'd really love you to take a listen, and the details of how you can donate or buy the single will be going across your screens now. And so please enjoy as we play out this session. Thank you, Stuart. It's been wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, ladies.
Bye-bye.
So